From rookies like Josh Jackson, who were handpicked to be messiahs for their teams, to those like Jalil, who soon turned out to be nothing but a bust, NBA drafts can be highly disappointing and deceiving. And what better example of that than the case of Josh Jackson? I'll be the first to admit that the NBA draft is a tough cookie to crack. Finding good players is difficult, and the draft is heavily reliant on luck of the draw. And things like who's available, the team's needs, the player's compatibility with them, as well as how much a player grows after the draft. But some draft picks are puzzling from the minute they're made. Like in this case, Phoenix Suns initially had difficulty finding the ideal combination of skill to complement Booker. Then, with the fourth pick in the 2017 NBA draft, front office chief Ryan McDonough believed they had found the solution. Jackson, who was the top recruit in 2016, averaged 16.3 points and 7.4 rebounds in his one season with the Jayhawks. He only spent 2 seasons with Phoenix before being traded to the Memphis Grizzlies and eventually being transferred to their G League affiliate because of struggles on the floor and some problems off the court. You see, being just good enough doesn't justify a number 4 pick. It's hard to believe now, but the NBA debated 2 players from elite universities as the best 2 wings in the country for much of the summer of 2017. Josh Jackson was advertised as a point forward with the handling, playmaking, and lockdown defense capabilities of Andre Iguodala. But it was soon quite obvious to anyone that he lacked all 3 of those attributes at an NBA level. His rival on the wing? Jason Tatum of Duke. Oops. The Suns could have taken Tatum, but Jackson, the number 1 prospect, caught their attention. 2 years later, they rapidly turned against him and surrendered not 1, but 2 second-round picks in order to avoid paying the money. Which is why this 2017 number 1 pick for the 76ers made no sense. Yep, my list must include Markelle Fultz. Philadelphia made a huge investment to trade up for him. The logical choice would have been to stay at number 3 and select Jason Tatum, but Philly's other pick, the infamous Sacramento pick, ended up being Romeo Langford, the final pick of the lottery in 2019. What about Fultz? He was a 3-level scorer who appeared to be the complete deal and a generational potential at point guard. He was also the type of player with size who would have fit Philadelphia nicely. But then, he got an injury and never fully recovered psychologically or physically. And that was it. Sure, being injured doesn't make you a poor choice. Accidents happen, but it doesn't justify leaving the rest of us high and dry. Some players aren't meant for the top 10, just like Keegan Murray. He is a prime example of a player who, despite being a top 10 pick, will be overhyped. Not gonna lie, he'd be a steal in the 20s. The former standout from Iowa is a slick, adaptable wing who's prepared to contribute right away as a rookie. At the age of 22, his game simply doesn't have much room for progress. Murray can become better, but he'll never have the kind of quick-twitch athleticism required to be a major scorer at the next level. He was a huge letdown for the squad that thought they were winning a franchise cornerstone in the lottery. Speaking of letdowns, Jahlil Okafor, am I right? This guy was projected as the top pick in the draft, competing with Karl Anthony Towns for that top position. Even though Okafor would have been a skilled post scorer designed for the 1990s, it was obvious to everyone watching that his style of play was not appropriate for the NBA of today. You don't want a sluggish big man who drags his feet and grinds the offense to a standstill in the post in the modern NBA. What a shame for a number 3 pick. By the way, remember Joe Alexander? You better score more than 282 points in the NBA if you're selected 8th overall. Alexander was considered the top athlete coming out of West Virginia for the 2008 draft. He had a deadly jump shot and unmatched leaping ability. None of that was translated into the NBA. The 6'8" swingman made it through 2 unimpressive NBA seasons before disappearing into obscurity. 2. Nearly every other player selected after him in the first round has at least succeeded in establishing a niche for themselves, but Alexander didn't. Shameful. Much like Dragan Bender and Marquise Chris, this team has had some horrible luck with rookies. One huge missed opportunity for the Suns to develop a supporting cast around a then-young Devin Booker was the 2016 NBA draft. The process started when Phoenix selected this big man from Bosnia and Herzegovina as the 4th overall pick. He was a complete bust, scoring 5.4 points on just 39% of his field goals on average. Then, Phoenix traded for Marquise Chris, who was a flop at the 8th spot. That, however, is a story for another time. While Bender was trying to accomplish anything meaningful in the arid Phoenix, other 2016 NBA draft picks are still standing out. Just 3 of the guys Phoenix could have had instead of Bender include Jamal Murray, Domantas Sabonis, and Pascal Siakam. Regrets. To be fair, Phoenix is not entirely to blame for Dragon Bender. He was hailed as the next big international star, and is largely to blame for the franchise's decision to stop supporting foreign players 2 years later, passing on Doncic. Even though Bender was always going to be a long-term project and was initially uncomfortable with pretty much everything he did, Phoenix kept putting him in difficult situations before giving up on him at age 21 and cutting bait on a sizable contract. Late in the season, Bender began to display some encouraging traits for Golden State. So did Marquise. He was an athlete with size but lacked many useful basketball talents. A man without a position, if you will. So Phoenix traded up for him at pick number 8, giving up 2 first-round picks, a second, and the rights to Bojan Bogdanovic. Chris was sent into the ether as a throw-in on a trade after only 2 subpar developing years. Seems like Phoenix simply can't seem to stop writing development ideas and abandoning them too soon. Then there were busts like Wendell Carter Jr. I could point to a dozen NBA draft flops going back several decades to the beginning of Mike Krzyzewski's stint with the Blue Devils. But this former standout big man for the Blue Devils, who was a top 7 recruit in 2017, is one of the most current on that list. In his only season with Duke, Carter Jr. averaged 13.5 points and 9.1 rebounds, so people were rightfully shocked that he was selected as the 7th pick. Only a few years later do we understand how Carter slid. He's horrible at defense. It's also the reason Chicago tried to move him this previous offseason for little to nothing. Oh, the picks we could have had instead of this guy. Charlotte Hornets had the same kind of regrets with Frank Kaminsky, but worse. Kaminsky wasn't particularly bad for a number 9 pick. He wasn't great either, but 9th-round picks rarely are. He symbolizes a decade of failure for the Hornets, who frequently selected players from prestigious universities who were older and more established, but had less potential. But the main issue here is Charlotte reportedly rejected 4 potential first-round picks. Yep, 4. That too from a Celtics club eager to trade up for Justice Winslow because they were so smitten with Kaminsky. To refuse that bounty, you really have to like that person. I didn't understand the obsession until today. Just like I don't understand why Cleveland went for Anthony Bennett at number 1. The 2013 draft was pretty bad. No one anticipated Bennett to be a choice, and when he was picked, Bill Simmons famously yelled in shock on the ESPN broadcast. Bennett played in the league for a total of 1,905 minutes and was poor and out of shape. He was so obviously poor that just 1 summer later, he was written off as a bust and a money dump. Imagine if the Cavaliers had chosen Oladipo and Embiid over Bennett and Wiggins, combining them with Kyrie Irving and LeBron first. Phew! Anyway, that's all for the rookies who were drafted highly but performed horribly.